Is the motion seconded? The member for Warringah has the call.
I second this bill, Mr Speaker, the Climate Emergency Declaration Bill 2020. There is no doubt we are in the midst of a climate emergency. For 6 months, Australia has been devastated by the worst bushfires in our nation's history. Communities have been wiped out, businesses irreparably impacted, cities blanketed by smog, forcing many indoors, our courageous volunteer services stretched to the limit, and our beautiful wildlife and landscape decimated. I'll never forget the images of Australian families being evacuated by the Royal Australian Navy, or the first images of singed wildlife searching for water, all on the backdrop of blood-red skies and ashes eerily falling like snow. The AMA has declared it an emergency. The Royal Medical Colleges have also done so. The Reserve Bank have recognised the threat. They are now factoring a worsening climate into their modelling and decision-making when it comes to managing our economy. Our financial regulators, APRA and ASIC, have guidelines on companies to report to shareholders on climate risks as it affects their businesses. Our public service and defence force chiefs have also been meeting for some time, planning for climate worst-case scenarios, some of which we are starting to see. All agree that Australia is especially vulnerable to climate change impacts and that this is having and will have an increasingly devastating impact on Australia's economy, our health system, our national security and our food system. The Australian public also agree. In October last year, I presented to Parliament a historic petition of 404,538 signatures. These are signatures of ordinary Australians who call on their parliament to take urgent action on climate change. I urge my fellow MPs in this place to contemplate on that. Each of those names is an individual with a story, with a voice, with a network and with a vote. To confirm this sentiment to the parliament, several times the crossbench and the opposition have attempted to move motions to declare a climate emergency. However, so far the government has prevented any official declaration of emergency or any debate or discussion. All 3 councils in Warringah have declared a climate emergency. They are but a few of over 90 who have now declared the same across Australia, representing a third of the country's population. At state level, the South Australian Legislative Assembly has also declared a climate emergency. This bill will go to the heart of these requests by declaring a climate emergency and putting the climate emergency at the centre of policy decisions and decisions of this government made by the public service and this government. Now, after a summer that devastated much of this country and left the rest blanketed in smoke, my fellow crossbencher presents a bill consistent with the voice of at least those 400,000 that signed the petition, but the over 81% in Australia who, when surveyed, indicate climate change action is one of their most pressing concerns. Yet the government does not seem to have heard these many voices and is intent on ignoring the science. Whilst the government has clearly accepted the science on the urgency of the coronavirus threat, we seem to be in a parallel universe when it comes to the impacts of climate change. In October 2018, the IPCC warned that we need to take stronger action to restrict the warming to below 1.5 degrees. So it also must accept that this government must accept the science of the urgency of that climate emergency. As a 46th Parliament, we have a duty to the Australian people to go beyond partisan allegiance. It's time for us all to be accountable. Let's listen to the people and take meaningful action on climate change. I stand with the member for Melbourne and thank him for presenting this bill. On behalf of Warringah and many other Australians, I commend the bill to the House.
The question is that this bill be now read a second time. The time allotted for this debate has expired. The debate is adjourned and the resumption of the debate will be made an order of the day for the next sitting. And I call the clerk.
Private members' business, notice number 2 on gender equality.
And I call the member for Newcastle.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I move that the motion relating to gender equality in the terms in which it appears on the notice paper. I am very pleased to stand to speak on this motion to recognise International Women's Day. The theme for 2020, Equal for Equal, is a call out to each of us to be working together to achieve gender equality. It recognises that every individual has a role to play. Here in this place we bear a particular responsibility when it comes to gender equality, as many of the levers that can bring about change are indeed controlled from this building. We have